Hey there. My name is sjofors, and I'm also known as the Price Whisperer. Now, I have a weird name, of course, because of my Scandinavian background. But Price Whisperer is not something that I invented. I was called the Price Whisperer so many times that I decided to adopt the moniker. And of course, it's a lot easier to find me just doing a Google search on the Price Whisperer as opposed to my difficult last name and so forth. So if you ever want to get hold of me or my company, do a Google search for the Price Whisperer, and we're right there with you. So anyway, today I want to talk about some false pricing strategies that price consultants talk about, right? And these are price consultants that have no practical experience of running businesses. They are either career consultants or they come from academia, and obviously these strategies, these pricing strategies I'm going to talk about, it looks really good on paper, right? But in reality, they they don't work. And I'm going to talk about first something called economic value pricing. Sometimes it's called return on investment pricing. Then I'm going to talk about a trio of pricing strategies that are called penetration, skimming, and neutral, right? But let's start with economic value pricing. It's really aimed at business to business pricing, and the idea here is that the seller is going to in detail understand the economic value that the buyer gets from buying the product that the seller sells, right? Now, there's several problems with this. First off, in order to be able to make any kind of economic value assessment of whatever the buyer is about to buy, the seller needs tremendously detailed information about the buyer's business. What are the costs? Where are the what is the process? What is the use cases of current products and so forth? How are they used and so forth? And that of course means that the buyer needs to open up in tremendous detail and tell the seller. The buyer needs to tell the seller a lot of very detailed information. And I mentioned this to several CEOs here because I think it's such a ludicrous idea that I asked them very simply, would you open up your kimono in such a detailed way that the seller can truly understand the economic value that of the product that they're about to buy, and the feedback I'm getting is, are you out of your mind? Why would I do that? They say. Why would I tell the seller my dirty secrets, my skeletons in the closet, right? So that didn't work, So you can't get the detail to make an economic value assessment of any value, to say that. Then the other is that if you, in the very unlikely event you will get that value, then you still have to do a lot of assumptions. The assumptions of how much better this new product that you're trying to sell is going to be, how the adoption rate is going to be, how much training is needed, maybe. What kind of effect it will have on the organization's business process, and you have to do lots of assumptions. And an assumption is a guess, all right? An assumption is maybe an educated guess, but it's still a guess. So first you don't have the data, then you guess what the what a lot of the then you guess a lot of the benefits of the product would give to the buyer. And then the third issue is, and then once you have that number of the economic value, that is completely untrue, then the question is, as a seller, what portion of that is you going to take as your value? 5%? 1%? 50%? 20%? I don't know. Do you know? I don't think so. You're back into guessing. So you have a you have a situation where the economic value is for sure going to be wrong, right? And then what is the whole point of it? And then what is the seller's cut going to be? And you're guessing again, right? So this is not something, and it's touted in the pricing community as the silver bullet for B2B pricing. I don't think it is, right? So the next of these pricing strategies that I want to shoot down is this troika of penetration pricing, skim pricing or skimming pricing, and normal pricing. And it was introduced by one of these career consultants many years ago, and the idea here is that when you come out with a new product, you start with a low price to penetrate the market, right? And that's why it's called penetration pricing. And once you've gained your desired market share, you increase your prices, and so you skim off the top of the market to get higher profitability, higher revenues, and so forth. And neutral, I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't think the theory even talked about what neutral prices should be. Now, there's several problems here. First off, if you have a disruptive product of some kind, you are only going to sell to early adopters, and early adopters are not price sensitive. So the idea of going out with a low price is just going to mean that in penetration mode, it's just going to mean that you leave money on the table. And if you develop this product, you put it into production, that's when you need the money the most, right? Okay, to quickly recoup the development cost and the manufacturing cost. And you're going to go out with a low price, you're going to leave money on the table, and it's going to be harder for you to recoup that those costs, right? So that doesn't really work. Now, the next thing that doesn't work is that, so let's say that you're in the market with that low price, and you gain some kind of market share. By the time you have reached a mature market, you're going to have a slew of competitors that maybe they do the same as you, the penetration pricing. So you're going to have price competition. You're not going to be unique anymore, right? Or you're certainly not going to be as unique as you were, and with that product. And then increasing prices is just going to be a boon for the competition, because they're going to take your customers, right? And so that sounds like a really bad idea too, doesn't it, right? And again, what neutral is, I have no idea, right? And the funny thing, this guy who invented this, he used the introduction of Lexus in the US as an example, and he said that the sole reason why Toyota was so successful when they introduced the Lexus was the pricing of the LS400. And that was priced then at 2/3 the price of the market leader, which is or was, I guess, the Mercedes S-Class. Now, there's a couple of things here. First of all, what Toyota did when they did the whole thing right. They established a new dealer network. They had a superior product. They had excellent customer support, and even the name is a word play on the word luxury. So they did a lot of things right. And pricing was part of it, but it was not the thing. It was not the only thing that made them successful. And by the way, they were following the footsteps of Honda that did exactly the same thing when they introduced the Acura brand 3 years earlier or something like that. Now, so Lexus used this penetration pricing strategy. And this was, I think they introduced themselves in the US 1988 or 1989. And so now we are, 35 years later, roughly. And one think that at this time it would be appropriate to go to the next level, meaning that skimming pricing, but not so. The LS, which is, it was introduced as the LS 400, I think now is the LS 550 or something like that, is much more expensive, but it's still 2/3 of the price of a Mercedes S-Class. So that didn't work either, right? The whole idea of skimming, penetration and then skimming pricing is just completely false. Sounds like a good idea. Not in reality, right? And again, what neutral means, I have no idea, right? There's only one way of pricing right. And the pricing strategy needs to be based on what buyers are willing to pay for your product or service. That's how simple it is, right? And what drives them to pay higher prices, what drives them to wish to increase their willingness to pay, so you can take price and see higher sales volume at higher prices and higher profits and so forth. Anyway, that was all for today. I hope you found this episode a little interesting, and please go and do your pricing right and base it on willingness to pay, not one of these academic theories that have nothing to do with reality. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.